Good evening, everyone. This is the February meeting of the Annapolis Environmental Commission. Let's do a roll call. I am Kathy Welker, Chair, and representing one of the Ward 5 representatives.
Good evening. I'm Bill O'Leary. I'm from Ward 2, and Paul Murphy will be joining us shortly.
Linda Matthew, I'm also in Ward 5.
Alicia Roberson, Ward 7.
Jeremy Hansen, also Ward 5.
Is that all of us? Yes. Okay, so next order of business, approval of January's minutes. Were there any corrections to the minutes? And Dylan, thanks for fixing those couple of things that we already brought up.
I think the corrections were already pointed out and made.
Yeah.
So
apologies again, Alicia. It seems
You're
like
fine.
I'm really good at mixing up people's names these days.
You're all good.
But yeah.
All right, so we need a motion to accept the January commission minutes.
okay.
Linda?
I move that we accept the January minutes as amended.
I second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Great. So next order of business is we are still looking for a vice chair for the commission. And I have a nomination. I'd like to make a nomination for Alicia Roberson as vice chair, unless somebody else, and if somebody else has a nomination also, please speak up.
I think it's a great choice.
Okay.
Thanks, Bill.
Yes, me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. So we do a motion and we do a motion again, right? Is there a motion to accept Alicia as the vice chair?
I so motion that we select Alicia Roberson as our vice chair of the Annapolis Environmental Commission.
And second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. There's
I don't know. Can I vote on myself?
Sure you can.
You can.
All right. Thank you, Alicia. We appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to working with you this coming year. Thank you very much. Okay, so Jackie had sent some information, or maybe Dylan did, I'm sorry, I don't remember, on R-2-25 demonstration program to build green roofs on city bus shelters. I don't know if folks had a chance to look at that. I don't know if Dylan, you could give us kind of a summary, but I believe that it's coming up before the city council soon. And one of the things we want to talk about, if we wanted to provide a letter of support.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've reviewed it probably as extensively as anyone else has. This is not necessarily my program, so I can't exactly speak for how it's going to move forward. But yeah, I think it's as plain as it's read. It's something that, I know there's some excitement about. I know it's kind of been a little bit back and forth with city council. But yeah, did anyone have any thoughts?
I have some thoughts. I guess my first question before I share what I'd like to share is, has anyone else on the commission used the buses here in Annapolis for public transportation?
A couple times. I think I've used the trolley a few more times than the buses.
Yeah,
Downtown.
But it's been several years, I think, at this point.
Anytime recent. So I've
My
had
son uses them all the time.
Oh, okay. And for school or?
No, just to go downtown with friends.
But it stops after I think 8 or 9 p.m., right?
Yeah, and then he walks home.
Yeah, so I didn't have a car for the last week because it needed to be fixed, and so I started looking into the public transportation here um more seriously than before, because previously when I've looked at it, I felt that it was really lacking in servicing the community, and it still appears to be lacking. And so I've I know that there's a big push for green roofs because it's kind of this like environmental buzzword. And I think it's gotten a lot more support than what's needed. Uh, because ultimately I don't see how the benefit of a green roof seriously outweighs the existing uh current bus structures. When you look at the resources needed to create the green roofs and then the waste that's produced by removing the existing green roofs, like that's, I don't see how that's really offsetting in a beneficial way. But also on top of that, then you're going to run into the issue of these things have to be maintained, and that's more time and resources. And what happens when it scales to a point where the city isn't properly maintaining it? So then they have to put out an RFP, and then they have to have another contractor come in and do all of the maintenance, which is just more cost to the city. And then on top of that, the other point that I was going to make, which is now fleeting from me, is that, no, I lost my last point. But basically, like I've seen this cycle before. As an example, Prince George's County thought it would be a great idea to do a rebate program for rain barrels for their community or for their county, and they had tons of people apply. Tons of residents get rain barrels, and then they never installed them. So then the county had to put out an RFP to have a contractor come in and install all of them, and then half of the time they weren't being used anymore because for reasons residents didn't. I just see that that can be similar in this scenario, but I think that, in my opinion, the priority should be creating a usable bus system that's easy, that people want to use, because that's going to be more sustainable than a green roof on a bus system or on a bus station, bus stop.
Are they really mutually exclusive ideas, though? Like, do you really have to have one and not the other?
Well, I think that you can have both once you've created the most usable system for our public transportation. Like once you get to the point where that's as sustainable as you can get, then you can consider, the green roofs on the bus stops but I don't think that that's really benefiting the residents right now. Right now, we're producing significant amount of, greenhouse gases because everyone wants to drive.
I have a question just to back up here. We say green roof. Are we talking like a living roof with some plant life on it that's absorbing water, or is it solar on them? I would imagine it's just some type of plant-based to capture rainwater. Or when we say green roof, what are we saying specifically?
Plant-based, yeah. Solar, in
Okay.
my opinion, would be better, or even just a painted white roof that offsets
The heat.
UV rays.
So, not to gum this up, but it's a 10 by 20 foot piece or whatever size. They're relatively small. Yeah, they collect some rainwater instead of splattering into the gutter, but it's all the other surface area. It would seem like catching rainwater further, I'll say downstream or further along the process, so there's a bus stop in front of the Royal Farms or the 7-Eleven. You catch a little bit on the roof. What about the other, 4,000 square feet of parking lot there that's impervious? And, it's like catching the water before it goes in the storm gates would be a bigger issue. But I'm not an expert on this, so I don't know. But it does seem a little bit like window dressing. Not that it's bad, but there might just be, for similar resources in mind space, bigger fish to catch.
Yes.
Dylan, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment. Alicia, you were saying that you think solar would be better. It is included in the staff report that solar and a green roof could be feasible. It's just kind of whether or not the site specifically meets the requirements for both. Not providing any sort of comment onto your overall opinion on the matter. I just wanted to include that.
Yeah, I mostly just wanted to share that I don't know that it's the best thing for the city to be focusing on right now regarding their public transportation. And that's just my opinion. That's what I wanted to share.
So Alicia, one of your points is that we need a more robust transportation system than necessarily green roofs first.
Yeah, I think that it's really falling short. The apps that we have are kind of don't work that well. I mean, we can use Google. You can use Google Maps, which provides the information a lot better, but they have something like Transit Go, and the app doesn't work for like getting picked up with multiple people on a bus. The bus routes, I just think need to be revamped, and better bus times need to be provided. But which is why I think that like a lot of people don't choose to use the bus system. And if we did, that is much more sustainable than everyone driving. I ended up opting to get Ubers because it was easier for me, even though I live right next to the giant grocery store here on Bay Ridge Road, and there's a bus stop right there. That's super convenient. But anywhere I wanted to go, it would take like 45 minutes for a 10-minute drive. So it's just been my experience for the last week. And I think that the city is small enough that it's something that they could prioritize and should. Philadelphia has an amazing public transportation system. And I mean, for that size, they can do it. I don't see why we can't. Pretty much anywhere I wanted to go in the suburbs or in the city would not add significant amount of time if I decided to take the bus or the metro. And yeah, or like we don't have any good transportation to BWI. It would take less time to bike to BWI from Annapolis than to take any public transportation. And I found that kind of shocking because I would think with the train station there and the airport that, there's probably a lot of people daily moving between those areas. I mean, I work near BWI every day, so some sort of public transportation up there would be cool too, but I think that would really service Annapolis also. Annapolis would benefit from that in a way.
Dylan, what is the timeline for this?
That I'm unsure of. I believe right now the next step is getting it through council, and then beginning the studies. Studies of this nature, I'm not fairly well versed in this sort of infrastructure, but I would assume it wouldn't take any longer than 6 months. Then you would have designs, and then implementation. It could frankly be up to 3 years, but that's a complete guess. Again, this is not necessarily my program, so I really can't speak too much as to how it's going to move forward and what the timeline is looking like.
So are you looking at doing a pilot, or are they? And I'm sorry, I read it when you first sent it. Now I should have refreshed myself on it.
The report talks about half of the bus shelters, I believe. So I don't think it's a pilot program necessarily, unless I'm mistaken as to what a pilot program is. Maybe you can have a pilot for half of the quantity. It sounds like a lot.
Yeah, I guess it's a little confused because the staff report in January says, I guess they specify 5 green roofs shall be established.
But there's no funding level for it.
So my understanding was the resolution was just for a pilot of 5 green roofs, and that there's already existing funds in the capital, the CIP budget for half
That's correct.
for
That's correct.
solar roofs on half of the existing bus shelters, and then this would be 5 green roofs on top of that.
Yeah, I think I had that mistaken. You're right. Yeah.
This
Well-
isn't, sorry, is this to meet any sort
Sort of permit, MS4 permit. I don't see credits. I don't think so.
If it were to be eligible for MS4, which I'm very doubtful that it is, I don't think it would be substantial.
Okay, just making sure.
I mean, the solar, as Bill knows, Bill and I have been on the commission for like 10 years. We're big advocates of all this stuff, so I don't want to sound like a naysayer at all. But doing small panels, you know, the installation, the cost, the cost per square foot is fairly expensive. I think what is a huge home run and been great success is the Annapolis Solar Park. I mean, you know, where we take larger areas and fill them with panels because the, you know, cost per however you want to measure it, square foot or square yard or, you know, whatever way you measure it, it's much less expensive just to lay out large chunks of this stuff and having guys up on ladders, putting them on bus shelters. And something that we'd spoken about maybe 6 months ago and Jackie's aware of is putting, it's a little bit different, but an area that already is wired for electricity, light posts, and they now are putting car charging on light posts. So you don't have to go spend $3,000 to put a new charging facility in, but in areas, particularly maybe Clay Street where there's less money. So I know it's a couple of different things there, but the overall part I think we want to look at is everything's cool and good to do, but if we spend like a bunch of money to put solar panels on small items, you know, how much electricity are we generating for that dollar amount as to do larger scale ones where the cost is much lower?
I agree with
Paul.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I agree with you. And to go off of that, UMD did a pilot study where they had like picnic tables that students could study at. And they had a couple, you know, solar roofs, solar panels on top of those. But all you could get out of it was charging a phone for, you know, a couple phones a day. And I mean, it's nice to have for them, but I think that there's a time and a place for a lot of these different like programs, opportunities, and I don't see how this is one of them.
at the scale that it's at and being green roofs in general.
So, you know, I know Jackie always suggests that somebody testifies at city council or we write a letter. I believe we can certainly write a letter and kind of lay out these points as for the city council's consideration as they're moving forward with this legislation, if there's interest in working on a letter that kind of brings up these different points.
What's the status of this bill again? Does anyone know off the top of their head?
I see a first reader, a fiscal impact note, a staff report, staffing impact report. I don't know if, I just seem to remember that Jackie said there was something that was happening at their
Was it
next meeting, like shortly after this meeting. So there wouldn't be a lot of time to put a letter together, but I don't know
or
exactly.
was it yesterday?
Was it
Because
yesterday?
the first reader's dated yesterday. Resolution
Oh, right,
225.
okay.
So if it's a first reader, where does that go next then? A second reader. But I really need to learn this process. That means there's still time to send a letter. Dylan, do you know?
Yeah, I would definitely say there's still time to send a letter. I'd say there's time to send a letter up until and maybe even after final signing. I'm looking at Legistar right now, actually, and I see that it's still coming up on second reader. I'm seeing that the action was taken by City Council on the 24th. I'll try to get to that as soon as I can. 225.
Do we need to have a vote on between all of us on if we are in support or not for it?
I mean, I don't know. Does it have to be yes, we want it or no, we don't? Because part of, in reading the city code that Dylan sent, right, that I sent out to all of you, our knowledge, our recommendations, are the information that we know that we can share with them to help them make a decision, I think is legitimate purpose of a letter too. Am I wrong? I don't know, because from this discussion, it just sounds to me that we wouldn't say no or yes. We would say it's a lovely idea. However, here are some things that we think you should consider that we think are important, right? And bring up like the transportation and the small projects where the big ones have bigger impact, and the different things that like Alicia and Paul have been talking about. Do they get letters like that, Dylan?
Yeah, it's exactly like you said. The commission is here to provide its expertise and act as an advisory board for environmentally related initiatives and legislation and things like that in the city. So if you see fit to provide comment on this, then that's absolutely within your purview.
I would be certainly willing to work with Alicia if you want to, Alicia, we could put an initial draft together, send it around so, Bill and Paul could provide their input too. And of course, Linda and Jeremy also. If that's something that you're up for, we could work on that together and we can make a motion and make it official, but.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. I guess it's just a matter of, do we need to do a motion or decision tonight, or if we think we can just take the time to return with the full letter next month and vote on it then. So it looks like it still has to go to other committees before it goes back for approval. So I think we might have time to come back to it next month with the full draft, but I could be wrong.
So if Dylan finds out for us if that works, that would be great. We can put it on the agenda we can work on the letter and have it on the agenda for next month. But if the timing doesn't work, is there another option can we do a vote off when we're not in session?
You can do it via email.
You can do it via email. Okay.
Yeah, and it sounds like the stance would be, we wouldn't really be taking a stance, we'd just be providing information, so I don't see why we can't do that over email.
Okay.
Mm-mm.
Do we need to vote to do the letter, or do we only vote once we have a letter, or we vote both times?
You don't need to vote to start to write a letter. I think it's more so just everyone reviews whatever letter. You take a vote as a board. If the contents of the letter are agreeable and are going towards the correct party, and then you move forward to send it.
Okay. All right.
Mhm.
Alicia, does the plan work for you?
Yep.
Okay, great. Wonderful. Then we will have it on the agenda for next month, unless, Dylan, we hear from you that we need to do something more quickly.
Yeah. I think it should be fine. But I will just confirm with people who understand the process a little bit better than I do. And I'll get back to you.
Okay. The Environmental Matters Committee, do they meet once a month?
Yes, they meet once a month on I believe it's the 4th Thursday. Let me double check.
So it would be like tomorrow?
We had a regular meeting recently, or they had a regular meeting recently. I'm double checking that. There's so many different boards and commissions that I keep track of that it all gets blurred in my mind sometimes.
There are a lot.
Yeah. I can just look it up. Environmental Committee.
And then I'm wondering, because I went to one in January, but it was virtual.
Second Thursday of the month at 3 p.m.
Second Thursday?
Yeah.
And are they usually virtual?
Seldom virtual. I do believe it's broadcasted virtually. Yeah, it is broadcasted virtually.
Oh, it is broadcast. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. All right, so we can move on to our discussion of 2025 priorities. Does everyone have the 2024 priorities to kind of look at for this discussion? Additionally, Marianne sent in writing her thoughts. And then we also had sent out, Dylan sent to me and I sent to everybody, the city code that kind of goes through what our commission is tasked with. And Marianne had suggested everybody take a look at the comp plan too, especially in the environment and sustainability part of it. So I could share my screen if we want to look at last year's priorities, unless everybody has them in front of them already. Yeah. Everybody has them? Great.
Yep.
All right. So I think that's a good starting place, looking at last year's and seeing what we want to keep, what we want to update. So I'd like to start the discussion there. I do have a couple of thoughts on things I might like to see added to our priorities. So the first one was support alignment with environmental programs with Annapolis Ahead, the comprehensive plan to expand, protect and expand natural assets within the city. That expansion of the tree canopy, and encouraging the adoption and widespread use of nature-based solutions and green infrastructure. I know Marianne would certainly like to keep the tree canopy, expansion of the tree canopy one.
So go ahead, Linda.
I guess like me too. I'm part of Save Our Trees, so.
I think it's really important. I kind of take issue with it a little bit because last year we had that meeting with the city forester, and I posed the question of, is there enough land owned by the city of Annapolis, or is there enough land in the city of Annapolis to achieve the 50% tree canopy? And he said no. So I know I know it's been a priority for a long time, and I know that it's something that we need to keep pressing the city about because it is a goal, but do we need to scale it back? Is 50% not achievable? Because when I asked him that, he said it's not. But if they spend millions of dollars, then they can maybe eventually achieve it, but also by acquiring, by purchasing more land and acquiring more land. And I just wonder if we need to rephrase it to hold the city more accountable to achieving something that's within the realm of what's possible, because I feel like they say that they want to save the trees, but then they haven't really shown the initiative to do so.
Guys, I apologize. I'm traveling, so I'm working off my phone. I don't have the hands up, so I don't mean to be rude, but maybe I.
Go ahead, Paul.
What else would you expect? But so the forester said we can't do 50%. Did he say we could do 40, 45, 35? What did he think was attainable?
I can't remember off of the top of my head,
Okay.
but it was less with the current land, or with the current, viable planting space in Annapolis.
Well, that's good. It would be nice for him to, or him or her, if we learn, is it 35%, like we're way off, or is it 45%? And not exactly on this topic, but pretty closely related. Let's recognize the fee in lieu. The first thing you're supposed to do, I believe, correct me where I'm wrong, replant on site. Oh, okay, well, we did that as much as we can. Replant in the town. Oh, well, we can't find more places to plant. Then it's fee in lieu. So apparently, the vast majority of all of this is the developers just go to fee in lieu because it's cheaper. They're like, screw it, I'll just pay the speeding ticket instead of like trying to do the right thing. Too much of a hassle to put it on site or find spots in town. I'll just pay the fee, which, and I think Bill recalls this conversation, maybe some of you others, a few years ago, and we're like, well, then we need to bump up the fee in lieu. If the financial disincentive is not that strong, they're just going to keep doing the cheapest thing. So perhaps we've increased our fee in lieu in the last 5 years. I do not know, but if we haven't, and still they're just checking the fee in lieu box and not trying the other stuff, we need to increase our fee in lieu. I thought we did increase it, though. I can't recall.
I will
Linda.
say,
Sorry.
Linda, I'll let you speak. Apologies.
Linda, do you want to go ahead, or would you like to let Dylan respond to Paul first?
Well, just real quick, if anybody, I know Kathy was at the meeting for Save Our Trees this week, but one of the biggest areas that we need to work on are private residences, not city property, but homes like mine in the city of Annapolis. And so instead of, spending money on the trees and the maintenance, or planting more and finding places to plant trees, would be educating and assisting the community. And that's part of what we did the other night.
I think the city forester included residential area in his analysis. It was all city of Annapolis, like plantable
But the residential
area.
area is one of the main, where the trees are in danger.
Correct. And I think that was included in his area analysis, and stated that all of plantable city of Annapolis area, including residential, there was not enough to achieve 50%. But we all kind of didn't say anything about it at the time. They just said, oh, we'll buy land to achieve it. And yeah, so
Yeah, I think when we had discussed this goal, because it went as throughout the draft of the comprehensive plan, it changed. and went back up to 50%. And I know we were pretty clear. Like Alderman Savage, I think, was one of the people who really wanted to see it at 50%. I know some others did. And I think most of the proponents understand just how much of a reach that really is, because that'd be like, I think Brian said 300 or more acres of new tree canopy in order to reach that. So that, yeah, I hear you, Alicia. It's a big reach. I think those of us who have seen or any summary of the data understand it's a big reach, but I guess we're just shooting for the stars and hoping we can at least do more than just hold the line, like I think we have done in recent years. I think Brian said on Monday, Linda, I think we gained 2 acres, or I was surprised to hear that there actually wasn't a loss. So that's an encouraging sign, especially now that we've increased the budget for the forestry program this year. So I'm hopeful to see what the impact might be in a few years from now.
Yeah, I can get that approach. I can understand that.
Dylan?
Yeah, I just wanted to weigh in. Currently, according to the comp plan, tree canopy is already hovering around 42%. So I remember a couple of people were saying, it was 35% achievable, or maybe 45. Yeah, I mean, on paper, 42 to 50 doesn't sound, that incredible of an achievement. I do think that people here are acknowledging that there are limited avenues, but I, have heard some very interesting and encouraging discussion about getting innovative with some of the things. I understand that Rob Savage has talked about things like street diets, which I know a lot of different jurisdictions and even other jurisdictions in different countries have explored doing. I'm not sure where that stands in terms of moving forward as a program, but I do think, there are creative solutions to kind of making up for that lack of area that there currently exists based on current infrastructure, if that makes sense.
Dylan, what was that you said that Alderman Savage
Street diet?
diet?
Yeah, it's called a street diet, or basically you find streets, and I actually did a project myself in my previous jurisdiction. Basically, you find streets that are too wide for the normal conveyance of traffic, and you basically just trim them down as if they're on a diet. And then in that newly created space, you establish grasses, shrubs, and trees and things like that.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it's a land grab between the road and the sidewalk. And if the road's got more capacity than it needs, take some of that and put it back into a nicer sidewalk.
Effectively,
There's some really good examples in New York City where they turned really unpedestrian friendly intersections into great, multi-use areas for pedestrians, bikes, protected walking paths, biking paths, and improve the traffic of flow even with less lanes.
Yeah, oftentimes it's actually safer to have narrower lanes than it is to have wider lanes. I'm sure you're all familiar with the studies that find that typically with wider lanes, with less environmental factors, people feel that they can go at a higher speed, whereas when it's narrower and there's a little bit more to pay attention to, people will actually kind of naturally slow down.
And the other thing the woman mentioned that I think is really important is when you pointed out the protection, the boundary layer between the vehicles, automobiles, and pedestrian bikers. And you see it in New York, and they did a really nice job in Toronto. And you put in some beefy trees and some, anyways, a variety of items. It makes the diners or the walkers feel so much more secure from not getting hit by a car, and it's pleasing. And again, it's rainwater capture. That might be a better bang for the buck than the rooftops of bus shelters. It's just playing some
Mhm.
good eco when you do the street tire.
So, I think we want to keep it, but do we want to change it a little bit, right? Like I know you talked about making
It was
the city accountable for its goals, but then we also talked about like, are there these creative ways, these creative things out there? What is the role that we can play, right, in supporting this?
it was a long
Even if we don't think that the 50% is reasonable.
it was just a long-winded way for me to say, like, I understand the importance. I just don't feel that it's the city's doing what's necessary to achieve it, and I also don't know if it's feasible. And so I am indifferent on if it's one of our, I guess, priorities for the year. Because I feel like it's been on there for so long, but I understand the importance of it to other individuals on the board. So that's all I'm
Well,
trying to say.
It doesn't have to continue exactly the way it's written either, though. If we want to, tweak it a little bit, maybe include something new that reflects like this discussion that we're having and how we can contribute.
Yeah, like I think focusing on residential areas is a really important part. Now, I will also say, as currently the president of my HOA, and tree management is a pain. And, homeowners don't want that on them. And so our HOA ended up having to take on the management of all the trees in our neighborhood, because if the homeowners had it their way, all of the trees would be cut down. So I see the need for it and I know the need for it, but it's, as a homeowner, it's like, well, I don't want the city to push this on me because they can be, a nuisance, but they provide such amazing environmental benefits, especially with like heating or cooling of your house and increased property values. And I can see streets that definitely need them. So I think maybe my interest would definitely be aligning it more towards residential areas and getting people on board.
And that goes to
Well-
Linda's point about educating, about
Mhm.
an educational component. Maybe there's ways we can, I know Save the Trees out there. Yeah, that organization's out there, but are there things that our commission can do? I don't know if Bill or Linda had their hand up first. Sorry.
I was just going to say, I think the component that we may be missing is, in terms of targeted tree canopy, is our opposition to rampant development.
Mm.
And that's been an important component of our argument for large scale developments like Crystal Spring or the Reserve of Quiet Waters, is the conformity to our tree canopy goals.
Linda?
All I wanted to add is, as a resident in the city of Annapolis with trees, I've got lots of trees in my yard. And before I joined Save Our Trees, I thought a beautiful tree in the back had English ivy growing up it, and I thought that was beautiful. And then Susan Wheatley told me, no, it's killing the tree. And I went to, when we did something in Hunt Meadow, I was there and I learned, oh my goodness, this is really dangerous and it's killing the trees and blah, blah, blah. So I came back home and started working in my own backyard, which is really, community property. But I've been working on the trees there. And then I sent Susan a picture of all the ivy turning brown from where I cut it off at the bottom. So I think a lot of it is just education, because I thought English ivy was beautiful. I did not realize that it was that damage it was doing to the tree canopy.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's two parts. It's that maintaining the existing canopy, and then where can we add new canopy, new trees.
Mhm. And holding the city accountable for their developments, like Bill said, I do think.
And I think that's a tough question too, because the affordable housing problem is not just here, everywhere, right? And so how do you, when you have these things in conflict?
Which is kind of why I posed the question of, should it not be 50%? Because it's not achievable. But I think it's hard for us to know. So it's good to shoot for the stars if possible.
Yeah, and I think since these are just annual priorities, I don't know if we even need to be concerned with the 50%, like to the 2050 target we're aiming at, if we're focused on maintaining what we have, doing a better job of taking advantage of those opportunities on land within the city to plant more trees. I don't think we even maybe we just even skip that one performance measure and focus on the other two, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'd like to see us add, in here, a piece about contributing to educating the community as one piece. And then I had a second one and it flew out of my head. So it flew right out.
I would support that education component, Kathy. That was, I think Monday night was a really good event, and like if the commission can help the city staff, and the Conservancy Board was there as well, and I think between us and them, we can help amplify the messages from like the Watershed Stewards Academy and other partners. I know I went and completed the first Tree Trooper module this week after Monday's meeting. It's like, oh, I didn't know that they're available for free online now, so I'll do that.
Yeah, I went we have a trail behind our houses, a very wooded area, and I went walking there yesterday thinking about the Save the Trees Forum and realizing I have no idea what kind of trees all these are. I didn't know if they were native trees or not native trees or invasives or whatever. So yeah, I think that would be awesome to do that. The other thing, I remember the second thing. I don't know if this commission would like to also take on maybe some research on just sounds like Alderman Savage is already thinking innovative, creative things, but maybe there's research we could do I don't know if we want to put that in there, because I know everybody has not a lot of time, but if that's of interest, maybe that's another way we could contribute to finding, some of those innovative things that are happening around the country or the world. Would they be interested in putting that in there, or is that a little bit too far for the time people have to devote?
Let's see if you have somebody willing to do that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Go ahead. Sorry.
You'd like to think, all of us, we'd like to think that there's already been a well-made YouTube, Zoom type video recording where we can go learn from people that have already done the studying, as opposed to us amateurs going out and trying to dig up new trends, So it'd be interesting. Maybe our forestry person in the city or someone can direct us to amateur's guide to to further understanding the options out there. Try and figure out what fits for our city. I'm just saying it'd be nice if there's something, there's so much good information on the web, if you can find it. So.
Well, that's kind of that's sort of what I meant when I said, kind of look for, not that we would make these innovative things up ourselves, but we would find out like, what are those best practices that are out there already? So yeah, I agree with you.
Maybe our forester can scratch up some things for us to look at.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry, I don't see everybody at once. I got to keep moving back and forth. So just, you have your hand up and I haven't recognized you, please just jump in. Okay, so we'll keep this with some tweaks. and we'll, share before it's finalized for sure. Anything else anybody wants to add on this one?
Well, the one thing I'm kind of repeating myself, if in my feeble old mind, this blue conversation has come up before, and if the city has increased the fee in lieu in the last 3 to 7 years, I'll drop the topic because they've sort of addressed it to new market rate. Whereas the old way, it was ridiculous how favorable, it was just to do the least desirable thing, write a check instead of the trees. So that's one thing I'd like to learn. And my point is, if the fee in lieu has been increased in the recent past, then we're probably okay. But if it has not, and it's at that rate of 10 years ago, it's egregiously wrong.
Dylan, is that
So
something you can help us with and let us know?
Yeah, I can definitely get some more information on that.
Thank you. All right, so encourage the adoption and widespread use of nature-based solutions and green infrastructure on city-owned properties. So this is one, I know that it's too bad Jenny isn't here, because I know she's talked about this too, having input on these proposed developments early on to make, recommendations to the city about what could make them more sustainable through some of these types of solutions. Any thoughts about this one? I like this one, but
Yeah, I'm still in support of it. I think they can do a better job. Haven't quite gotten there, but they should still take it into account.
and I know, Dylan, that you guys said there aren't a lot of as many developments happening as there used to be, right? But as they come up, we'd like to be able to have information about them early on. And I don't know what the mechanism is for us to have input on those private developments.
Yeah, I think I would need to talk a little bit more with the Department of Planning and Zoning as to when they feel is an appropriate time for comment from an advisory board, because I know sometimes, especially in those early phases, those communications between developers and the city can be a little bit sensitive. So I can provide some more clarity onto that, but I definitely think that there is at some point room at the table for the commission to weigh in as to how environmentally sensitive the project is.
I think in the past we've often addressed comments on developments to the planning commissions and then letting them do what they will with that information, because they play that role in that process that we don't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would make sense.
But not sure if or how that has or hasn't in the past made or created any change in the results or not. But I just wanted to note, I think that's how we've done it in the past. But Bill or Paul may remember something else.
Well, I was just going to say, I'd like to see when it's also city development items. Jenny made some good points when they were presenting the plan for the splash pad. There were a lot of opportunities for stormwater, green infrastructure solutions, nature-based stormwater solutions that weren't shown and didn't seem to be considered, or didn't appear to be considered when the Department of Public Works was presenting us. But to be fair, he was not the engineer, so some information may have been lost. But yeah, I think it would just be nice to also have city proposed items as well, especially if they start doing the street diet work.
Yes.
There's a lot of opportunity for sandwiching things.
I don't know if in the comp plan there was any mention, well, for city-owned properties, but even for requirement, I don't know that it would be in the comp plan, but for private development, requirements for any changes to asking them to use nature-based solutions, or like if planning and zoning has changed what they require from developers too. I didn't say that very well, but just wondering, like, if things have changed, if any kind of requirements have changed.
I don't think anything's changed, but I know that developers are required to mitigate their stormwater, whatever is produced on site. That's been
Yeah.
changed in the last however many years, but
Okay.
I don't know if there's anything specific to green infrastructure.
So are there any specific changes that we want to make to this one? Or does it stand? Does it kind of already cover all the points that we've made?
I'm fine with like the topics it touches on, but if you want to clean it up or rephrase it differently, that's fine with me. So I don't know if you want to keep all the same language or anything.
I mean, to me, I think it says what we've been talking about here. I haven't heard anything that's would change this, but I'm certainly open to changing it if somebody else, sees that it could be strengthened somehow.
I think it's written how I think it's written in a way that covers everything we've talked about, but I haven't seen that from the city of Annapolis. Like, since we submitted this last year, we hadn't seen any of their, city-owned property that they were proposing to develop or redevelop, and being able to provide expertise and advice on this topic, except for the splash pad, but that was so far down the development path that, like, anything we said didn't matter.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of my questions, because right here we have these broad priorities, but what the specific actions we take are like another step, I think, which is what you're talking about, right? Like, how do we work with Dylan and Jackie to make sure that we're aware of these things and that we're having this input earlier on? Unless you would like to.
Yeah, like, I think our
language in here to make that strong, to make this stronger, to make that point.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I think our priorities are good. I just haven't seen how they've been applied, I guess, in the last year. And I think they're good priorities to reiterate again.
But we need to be more specific about what does this mean that we're doing, and what do we have to, where are our opportunities, right?
I don't know.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good conversation for us to have. Once we have our priorities, I think going back and looking at them very specifically, and what do we want to do? There are very specific actions we want to take. What are those? So like in the first one, right? If we add about educating the public at the next meeting, or whichever meeting, right? We can have a very specific discussion about what does that mean? How do we do that?
Where are the action items?
What are the action items? Yeah. That's how I'm kind of seeing it.
And something that would potentially relate to this one in particular would be if the whole Watershed Act selects the Severn, then that would elevate, like, I think the attention we'd want to give to Weems Creek in particular, since that's the top priority for Severn River Association's plan. Like that, that would be, and we should, not sure exactly when we'll find out, but March is when they're supposed to make the announcement on the watersheds they're selecting. So we may know I would hope we would know by our next meeting if the Severn made the cut and that the watershed would be seeing maybe a little extra state money going to projects in the watershed.
What is the funding again? 5 million?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
5 million a year, but I forget how that's divided up, and I think that may be but I think it also opens up or possibly makes it easier to pull funds from other existing streams.
Dylan, do you know when that, you're going to hear about that?
I believe that was applied for through the Resilience Authority, and I haven't heard from them recently about that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that that public input period might still be open. All I know is the announcement's supposed to happen in March, but don't know if that's early or late March.
Okay. So we will leave this one as is and carry it over.
Yeah, and then I think we can maybe get more specific if we're bringing this back next month.
Okay. And next one, support the city's effort to reduce carbon emissions and increase resilience in the face of future climate conditions. So the first one, review and provide feedback on the city's resilience plan. I know, Dylan, that's gotten pushed a little bit while this course is going on, right? That you're doing, and the input that you're going to get from University of Maryland, I think it is, right?
Yeah, regarding kind of a holistic, comprehensive resilience plan. Yeah, we're currently engaging, with the EFC at UMD, and kind of getting their technical expertise and their evaluation as to what we have and how we should move forward. So that's effectively correct that we kind of are postponing it just because we're trying to collect data in the most kind of unbiased and expert, I suppose, supported way possible. Although we are moving forward with our greenhouse gas inventory and climate action plan, and have some news on that soon. We're still in the selection process for a consultant on that, but that should be resolved probably in the next 2 weeks.
Oh, okay, great. The one question I do have is the last line. Additionally, the AEC can advise on ongoing or early actions under ES1. Can somebody remind me what ES1 is? I was just trying to look really quickly. No. Trying to scroll through the comp plan really quick. I'm not having a lot of luck.
Let's see, Annapolis ahead, goal ES1.
I think ES1 is part of the, I believe it's part of the strategies section in the comprehensive plan. So if you were to scroll down to the very bottom, it'll establish different goals and strategies and break them up by ES and different things like that. I'm going to try to find it in the comprehensive plan real quick.
Yeah, I have it here. Actually, I was looking at the action plan. So ES1 is resilience efforts are comprehensive, equitable, and relevant to all residents. And performance measure 1 is the resilience plan, and performance measure 2 is the CIP. includes resilience-related projects in all wards. So I think we could support that. Any thoughts? All right, so we'll carry that one forward as is. Next one, the AEC supports efforts aligned with Annapolis Ahead to reduce the collective carbon footprint of city activities and residents and improve the quality of the local environment. So we can support this through joint meetings with relevant boards and commissions as appropriate. And then it lists the short-term priorities, support for continued efforts to expand EV use and to complete the greenhouse gas inventories. And then the short-term efforts to improve rideshare, public transit, cycling. Alicia, to one of your points. Any discussion on these or changes that you'd like to make? And I think, again, this kind of goes to, these are good priorities, but what does it mean that we do? And that may be those action items that we have to, kind of figure out down the line. But are there changes you'd like to see made to any of these, or?
The thing I would say that I would change is personally prioritizing the
Public transit over the electric vehicles or the city of Annapolis vehicle fleet. And I think EV charging infrastructure is still also nice to have, but most residents will choose to have it at their house. And I think that you're going to get a bigger benefit to the residents and the environment by prioritizing public transit and cycling and walking.
I'd agree with that. I think we're, as far as the public spaces and opportunities for chargers, there's been a lot of progress. You can see chargers in a lot of the, not all, but most of the parking lots for store, like the Giant and the library, the rec center. So I'm not sure there's as much to be done in those types of spaces, but certainly in residential areas, there's more opportunity for EV charging.
I know from my perspective, I don't have an opportunity to charge at my house, right? So, I don't have an EV yet, would love to have an EV, but so I do look like, oh, the library, okay, I could go charge at the library and then go hang out at the library for a couple of hours, and I think there has been a lot of progress made with having some of that charging, around at shopping centers and things like that. But I do wonder if we do kind of reach a tipping point where we're having a lot of EVs, which we do not, if that's going to be like what we have now is not going to be sufficient for those of us that cannot charge at home. So I think they're both very valid. And it almost seems like this expanding the charging is actually certainly easier than improving some of our transit options.
Well, and that's the issue we run into government a lot. It's a level 1 solution, task, problem. But what we need to focus on is the level 3 tasks, but it's much harder to achieve. So a lot of times we don't go for those. So yeah, that's.
So are you proposing swapping these, or were you proposing eliminating
just swapping, just seeing the one above the other, but that is my opinion.
Anyone have any objection to doing that?
That's fine. And yeah, I think the bigger, more system-wide efforts are certainly more impactful.
Any other comments on this one? So just carrying it forward with swapping those two bullets works.
I don't know if it really makes a difference, but
Well, I mean, I think
mentally.
it does say something, right, about what we want to prioritize as we're going forward, right? And where we think maybe we can where we should put our energy, more of our energy. Because the first one kind of is happening anyway. The second one is more difficult. So I think it's worthwhile. All right. And then we have strengthening community and access through environmental efforts, improvements to the quality of our local environment or for the benefit of all city residents. Public access to our waterways and green spaces should continue to be encouraged and expanded. We can use our voice to amplify community concerns related to environmental justice, inclusion, and equity. Any thoughts on that one?
I'll just say I feel strongly that we at least keep this. If we modify in some way, I just want to make sure this stays there, because we see at a national level a lot of thoughts in this vein getting deleted, and I would just feel at a city level it's important to keep this on the list, if not strengthen it or make it more prominent.
I agree.
I went to they had a couple of meetings about the Cars Beach, Elktonia Beach development. And they had a team come in from North Carolina with a gentleman whose name I don't remember, but he is like the guru of parks apparently in the country. And it was really interesting. They, sat in a couple of sessions where he facilitated with everybody about like, what do you want to see? It was much more creative than what I just said. It wasn't just what do you want to see. It was very creative. But what was really fascinating is how really important the history of those beaches, is to the community. And there were some women there who had actually, as children, had grown up at Cars Beach in its heyday, right? And hearing their stories was just wonderful. But it was really important to maintain access, but also that history was really important to everybody there. They were really great sessions, I gotta say. So yeah, I'm very much in favor of keeping this one. Okay, so I would like to add another one here, looking at the city code, and we've already talked a little bit about it tonight, but I thought I had my code right up here. Where'd it go? There we go. One of the things it says is that the commission, shall make recommendations to the city council, determine the source of problems, collecting information about solutions, and educating the public, individuals or organizations who are the source of particular problems concerning their relations to the problems and their relation to solutions, which sounds very negative. But what I would like to do is have a priority that really talks about how can we contribute to educating the community about some of these important issues. We have a Facebook page, right? We have, which I didn't realize until Bill pointed it out to me, we have a Annapolis Environmental Commission webpage on the city site that has not been updated in a long time. I think those are a couple of ways that we could, really start to kind of amplify some of the important information that's out there. I was really excited. I went to the AMRI meeting, the group that's going to do some flood work in Eastport, and I put the flyer on the Facebook page. and we are getting like a couple new, and some other people have posted some things too. Thank you to those of you who have been putting things up. We've gotten a few new people. We got Congresswoman Elfreth. I'm not sure if I'm saying her right. She followed us. Yeah, Sarah followed us, which was nice. So I think that's something that I really like to put in our priorities, is kind of that education mission. Thoughts and discussion.
I'm all for it.
Thank you, Linda.
I think some of us just, take for granted the city that we live in, and it's so beautiful, and all the amenities we have with the Chesapeake Bay and the ocean 2 hours away. And, Annapolis is a beautiful city. It's safe for walking, biking, and, I think we just take for granted what we have, and we need to let people know what they can do to help maintain it. That's my 2 cents.
I like it. Other thoughts?
I'm in support.
Mm-hmm.
I like the idea.
Thank you. So I will write something up about that. I do think we kind of need to figure out like what if we want to update our webpage, work with Dylan and Jackie about what that looks like. And then as far as Facebook, I've been taking notes since I became aware, Bill gave me these admin rights. I've been taking notes, and there are so many things I could be putting on there that I'm thinking would love to have a discussion next month about, like, what is like the, I don't know the right word, the protocol, about what are we going to put on there? What should we, much as I might like to put something on there, maybe that isn't the appropriate place to be on our Facebook page or something. So would like to be able to talk with everybody about that next month.
That means we should all go find our Facebook page and our web page.
Mm-hmm.
I put the links in that one email I sent to you guys, but I can resend it. I can resend it to you.
Look, I tried to print out something you sent, and it was 900 pages. So.
Oh gosh, yeah, that was probably the comp plan, I think.
Yeah.
It was like, don't print the comp plan.
I already did. If anybody wants to borrow it, I'll give it to them.
That'll make a good doorstop for you.
All right. Any thoughts and ideas for other priorities for this year?
Mm-mm.
I'm a little, I guess, confused, concerned, whatever, about what's happening at the city dock. And I know they've got plans, they've been approved, and now people are challenging the funding and who's paying for it. And, have we gone too far? Whatever. I mean, I'm just concerned about what's going to happen there. Is it going to, because weren't they supposed to start like in October or November, and nothing's been done yet?
I know they were still waiting on mitigation grant, I think, grant money.
Okay.
So I don't know if that was what was happening. I see a lot of back and forth in the Capitol about it.
Yeah. My source of world news is the crab wrapper.
Yeah. If something like that was going to be a priority, what would the priority be to and is it part of something broader about downtown in general, downtown?
Or to just mitigate the flood circumstances, but I think that's number one. The reason they started that was because of the flooding, and then it turned into a big park and Ferris wheel or whatever it is they're putting there.
No Ferris wheel. That went away. That went away. Thank goodness. Yeah.
Yeah. like my issue I took with the whole plan was that I felt it was a grotesque amount of money for a solution that wasn't really a solution. It also wasn't nature-based forward, and it's still not addressing the bigger issue. So yeah, I obviously dealing with that flooding should be a priority of ours. And you know, I think the city, it's obviously a priority to them and they know it is. I don't wholly agree with how they've been going about it. And I don't know if, you know, do we as a commission agree with their solution? Is that something we do want to challenge or let it work out how it does? I mean, I don't know if there's even
Yeah, I don't know if the
a
stage
space
is
for us to
at,
say anything
that
anymore.
there's, at the stage they're at, how much, I don't know. And Dylan, I don't know how familiar you are with the ins and outs of this.
Frankly, not much at all. Jackie's more involved with it. I do understand that there's a case against the city dock by some concerned residents or maybe business owners, and that there are some permitting issues, I believe. That's essentially the extent to which I know. You know, I would say you're, of course, as the Environmental Commission, allowed to weigh in however you see fit. But I would say that, you know, if you were to provide some criticisms as to how the dock should move forward, I'm not sure if it would be the best thing for the sake of resilience to do it around this time, just because, you know, if even the Environmental Commission is having things to say about it, it might, you know, be counterintuitive to the overall goal of resilience that I think we all agree with.
But I think the point we're making is that we don't find it's in line with being resilient.
Yeah.
It's not a resilient solution, in my opinion. And I guess, yeah, the question is, does the commission think that? And do we want to take a stand against the city? That's a big question.
I guess I'm wondering if there's a way, and that's why I'm trying to, like, is it in here already? But to kind of wrap that into a broader priority, because and we can get an update on this, but I do think it's like so far down the line, unless
Right.
unless there's a chance to open up for our thoughts, because something changes, like this lawsuit or something, that there might be a time. So maybe there's a way to wrap it into a larger priority, because like there's that Amory project that's starting in Eastport. There's like Cars Beach, Elktonia, you know, there are these other things that are happening where there's definitely the opportunity for like these nature-based solutions and for our input, I think. So rather than project by project, is there like a larger priority around kind of this issue? I mean, we do have this.
I think it goes back to my point of, I think we kind of miss the ability to say anything, because the time that it was presented to us was presented by DPW and it was so far along that,
Yeah.
like, Jenny did a really good job of trying to point out where they missed opportunities. But I think it's a matter of like, maybe we just have to let this one play out however it's supposed to, and we can, you know, on the next one, we can go back to the city and be like, see, this is where you made mistakes. And so we just come at them a little bit harder on the next one.
So this kind of falls under that: encourage the adoption and widespread use of nature-based solutions and green infrastructure, especially on city-owned properties. And we talk about, you know, giving advice on the proposed development, redevelopment. We talked about getting in early on that. Also, the promotion of pollinator-friendly native plants. but maybe we could even expand that one to be, to not just pollinator or native plants, but resilience, right?
I mean, yeah, like living shorelines and things like that. Bill, Jeremy, I don't know if you remember that presentation with DPW, but my question to you is, do you think that proposal is resilient, like encompasses resiliency? I just,
Or if there's
I,
other.
I would say
resiliency.
well, like, I think you're making really great points. But one thing I do like about the approach to it. I don't know if the outcome is everything it could be. I think you're making really good points. Like, it could have been different, but that it is considering, like, not just flooding, right? It is looking at the social aspects and the economic aspects, and it's looking at, like, what are those other benefits of doing this? So we're not just stopping flooding. We're also going to make it a project that achieves these other objectives too. And I do like that.
But do we have to do it all at the same time? Can they do it in stages? Like, first deal with the flooding, then build a visitor center that sounds like a multi-level mansion. So,
well, and that's the thing, right? It's like that visitor center is like a real sticking point for a lot of people. But there's that other pieces too, like getting rid of the impervious surface of all that parking, of a lot of that parking lot, right? That's a plus for sure. Alicia.
I just want to say sustainability has 3 pillars. It has to be socially sustainable, economically sustainable, and social, economic, and environmental. And I think, like, my complaint with it is that it wasn't economically or environmentally friendly. Yes, they got the social sustainability part down pat, kind of. But my question was the design in itself resilient? And that's where I felt that it fell short. Something that I would have liked to have seen was a living shoreline with a boardwalk that could be used by the public with, education, podiums, and, I think that it could have been expanded in a lot of different ways. But I think that a living shoreline that doesn't require additional electricity to bring up their
barriers.
And to charge these huge pumps that they were going to have underground to pump stormwater back over the barrier. Like, that's where I thought the sustainability cycle got lost.
I think you're making very good points.
Well, is that what they learned when they went to Scandinavia or whatever, and how to mitigate the flooding and all?
That was probably more the Netherlands trip, I imagine. That's where they
That's
talked
it.
more about flooding.
Dylan?
Yeah, I'm just wanting to chime in. I think, again, as the Environmental Commission, you can, provide your expertise, how you see fit. That's why you're sitting on this board. I will say, though, for a living shoreline, typically that requires a much more gradual and shallow a shore, effectively. And for navigable waters and a dock, it would be very, very difficult to maintain the marine functions of it while also having a living shoreline, unfortunately.
Yeah, you'd have to get rid of the dock, which could be a problem. But yeah. I just meant to say of like, I meant to say of like, I think that maybe a living shoreline isn't right, but there could have been possibly something else. But that's all.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, I was just going to say something similar to what Dylan, you were just saying. I think the notion of a living shoreline, I think we kind of escaped that hundreds of years ago, really, for a functioning city dock. But I think the barriers that they proposed that would, lower when not in use, and having those pumps it's an absolute necessity, and the backflow preventers and things like that. I think from a stormwater and flooding mitigation aspect, I mean, I'm not an engineer, but it sounded reasonable to me. I think you could argue about parking spaces and whether we need a big fountain and bandstand and stuff like that. I think those are valid concerns from city businesses, but I think from a stormwater mitigation aspect, I didn't find any fault with the plan.
I think it's a good way to mitigate stormwater right now. I just don't think that it builds for a resilient downtown down the line, is what I was trying to get at. I think that it will only get worse. And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is depending upon how bad it gets, this is a stopgap measure. And even this, I think there's serious questions as to whether the funding is going to show up.
Yeah. And then that kind of goes into like the economic sustainability pillar, like the Ellicott City is looking at it. The lowest part of Ellicott City, basically, I mean, I think that they've decided they're no longer going to have businesses down there because it will always continue to flood in certain areas, and it's not worth it to keep rebuilding that. So like, at what point do we as society in the city of Annapolis say, this is area we're going to lose to the environment? How do we preserve and save what we can still and move upland? I know that that's a very hard theory for society and government right now, but I mean, it's something that I've been reading about that's interesting of, move to higher ground, go,
It's very, it's hard.
I know no one's going to like it.
Having it in lots of places.
But, yeah.
Well, I mean, what you were just saying about Ellicott City is in the bottom of basically a big bowl or a sink. Yep. And this goes to our overall zoning priorities in the state and overdevelopment and overbuilding. And we have created basically too many areas of impermeable surface, and now all that water just runs right down to the bottom, which is downtown Ellicott City in their case. Yep. And yeah, they're in a untenable situation that's been built over time. It's the result of too much overdevelopment.
But for the last five or so years, 10 years, I guess, they've been putting in millions and millions of dollars in stream restoration projects and cisterns and bridges and all of this stuff to mitigate the flooding in that area. And then they got wiped out again right after they built, and they finally started to decide like there are certain areas that businesses won't move back into. It's not financially worth it anymore.
Sure, and they can't insure it and things like that. I'm sure that's the case.
So I guess that's my question of where, like, is this resiliency or is it just an expensive Band-Aid?
I think it's going to buy us a good amount of time, and as best as we can do.
So for the priorities, I would propose on that under the first priority, the second bullet, we tweak the language a little bit to make it more kind of take a broader view of what we're looking at. That we're looking at it from this like resiliency perspective that Alicia's been talking about, rather than just promotion of like pollinator-friendly native plants, which is included in that, but maybe we'll take a broader look. And so if there's a chance with the doc, like if it comes around again, we could comment on that. But then this priority would also will also guide us, with, like the Cars Beach and all these projects that are coming online now. Any thoughts about doing that?
Yeah, I think resiliency.
Maybe include in that the definition of sustainability that Alicia was telling us, social, economical, and environmental.
Okay.
That
I
is,
like it.
Yeah.
All right. So I want to move on. So I'll take a first crack at this, but I will probably come back to you guys. I will definitely come back to you guys for help with this to make sure that we get it right. And if anybody has any thoughts after this meeting about something you'd like to include that we haven't talked about, I would say we're not closing the door right now to changing this. So feel free to bring it up, as we go through revising this. So thank you. That was an excellent discussion. I don't think we need to vote, right? We don't vote till we actually have the priorities, right? Okay, just want to make sure. So I had on here the webpage and the Facebook page updates. I don't know if we have time. We might have time. We talked about it a little. I talked about it a little bit already. Yeah. But I guess what is the best way forward with those? Because I feel like we can't just say, okay, let's start posting stuff, right? I think that we need to, is it just a discussion next time when we have more time, or?
Is there an administrator or somebody that can add and subtract stuff?
So the Facebook page, I know Bill is an administrator and he gave me administrator rights. I don't know who else has.
I think that's it for now. I can certainly add whomever.
Added Dylan, right? Or that someone on the city has access to?
Ina, I believe, has like full control over it, but I can double confirm that.
The Facebook page?
That was my understanding. I had reached out to her at some point about it, and it seemed like she was basically the owner of it.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, it's none of us. Can that be changed? Can you change the owner?
I'm not sure if Ina would like that, but I can definitely talk to her about, adding administrators and potentially changing ownership. But I think when it comes to any management of websites, that typically goes through that division of the city.
Oh, who is the owner?
Ina Young is our, I believe her title is website administrator.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I was thinking that was like somebody that used to be on the commission. I had that wrong. Sorry.
No, Ida's with CIT.
What you said makes perfect sense. Yes. Okay. I thought it was just like an ex-commission person. So
no, yeah, I should have clarified that. Yeah.
And I don't think we need to vote in order to post content on Facebook. No. We can do whatever we want, basically.
Yeah. So I still would like to be able to have a discussion about, so we're kind of focused in what we're doing. Like if we really want to educate the people, especially according to our priorities, doesn't mean we eliminate other things. I just want to make sure that we all are kind of on the same page. Like this is like a definite no, we don't want to do that, because I've just been having so many ideas about what could go on the Facebook page. And I don't want to overwhelm either, right? Like just constantly throwing stuff up there and it's too much. So I just would like to have that discussion. And then as far as the city webpage, that's kind of a whole different thing, because that's not something that's going to change frequently. But it sounds like it hasn't been touched in a long time.
I used to have access to Site Infinity, which is the webpage, content management tool. They may have moved on to something else at this point, so I don't think I have any current access to make any modifications to Annapolis.gov/environment.
So Dylan, maybe you can find out what access we have to the webpage. And then next month we'll have a discussion about, we'll look at it. We'll like share the screen and actually look at the page and go through it and see what we'd like to do with it. And in the meantime, in your spare time for this group, take a look at it and see what ideas you have, thoughts you have about how it could be used, best used.
That's good.
Great. All right. So ongoing business or updates. Dylan, that would be you.
Did any of you have a chance to review the February highlights submitted to the Environmental Committee?
I did scan them. I don't know if anyone else has had a chance to look at them. Let me see. I made a couple of little notes.
Yeah, if you want to talk about your notes, or I can just give like a brief overview of kind of what's the contents of
Yeah,
where.
why don't you do that to start? That'd be great.
Yeah. So a couple of things are new. We are working with a consultant, not necessarily a consultant, but they act on behalf of a solar installer who are enrolled with the Empower Maryland Community Solar Program. And this program has actually been opened up to municipalities now. So it's pretty much for all how do you say, the utility customers in the state of Maryland. And so we have the potential to sign on with this installer and receive, an increased portion of our energy coming from solar farms. And actually, we would receive a financial benefit. So we would effectively be costing the residents less money for energy uses, and could be used for other initiatives. So we're kind of moving forward with that. There's some technical details being worked out, but we're hopeful to provide some more updates soon. We're also working on a grant for the Municipal Investment Fund. We're trying to build more partnership for financing strategies, leveraging the institutions in our area, green banks, and different things like that to create economically sustainable efforts to promote environmental sustainability. Sort of like exactly what Alicia was getting at earlier. We want to make sure that not only just improving our local environment, happen quickly and equitably and socially sustainably, but we also want to make sure that it's economically sustainable in the long run. And so forming these sorts of partnerships in partnership mainly with the Resilience Authority is going to be a good way moving forward to ensure that everybody benefits economically from our environmental initiatives. I talked a little bit earlier about the greenhouse gas inventory and the climate action plan. We, like I said, are close to selecting a consultant for that, and then we'll begin work fairly promptly. Some small updates about resilience planning, but nothing really beyond what Kathy and I were talking about earlier. We did talk with LWLA, Larry Weiner, Landscape Associates, about the solar park and the pollinator habitat being established there. We've had some back and forth between them and the manager of the solar park, and we've narrowed down pretty closely the effective site area and the space which can be effectively planted on. There's lots of different variables there. There's the short height of the solar panels. There's the slope all around it. The catchment basins and different things like that. So a lot of details really had to be worked out, but we're confident that we have the funding that we need to move forward and make sure that that's a quite the remediation project beyond remediating the landfill and installing solar panels, and then also providing a ton of pollinator habitat to really boost the vegetation health in our area.
What happened to the sheep discussion, Dylan? Wasn't there?
Yeah, it's a good question. As of right now, just because of the site conditions, it seems as though that it's just not going to be feasible. I know we all wanted to have
I know, I did.
as well as a pollinator park, but unfortunately, it just wasn't feasible because, again, the solar panels were just so short that there were some concerns around that. On top of that, just the kind of the maintenance regime that's necessary, particularly because it is a landfill and it's got that membrane only about roughly 2 feet at most beneath the top, beneath the surface. That just a more planned out and carefully executed maintenance regime was just going to be necessary.
Yeah.
And maybe in a future project we can explore.
Yeah, that would be great. I do see there's going to be a virtual presentation by Larry Weiner to the Environmental Matters Committee in April, maybe. I definitely would like to be able to try and attend that meeting. So I need to try and, I don't know if you can put a note to help me remember. But would definitely like to.
I can do that. Yeah, we're working out the meeting schedule, but they will be presenting to the committee. Continuing to work on our ferry pilot project. We are making great work on the conservation easements restoration. I suppose this has a bit more to do with the conservation board, but I believe I've reported at one point to this committee or to this board, that we have some issues with our easements, and we are working with our Office of Law, and we are working to bring on some external consultants to resolve the situation, and even potentially find easements that we're not currently aware of as an institution, because there have been a couple of situations in which easements went effectively unposted, to the point where only after development happened did someone realize, hey, wait a minute, there's an easement here. So we'd like to make sure that retroactive corrections don't have to happen in the future, and that everything is plain, simple, documented, and clear to both parties. We are hoping to establish an ocean-friendly garden somewhere in the city, ideally close to the river. This is a project that we're really excited about because we're all familiar with Surfrider and the work they do, and they have youth chapters all throughout. We love to see more students getting involved in environmental initiatives, inspiring the next generation of stewards. So they came to us actually, and they said they have a budget and they'd like to do it in our city, and we think that's a great partnership. So we're just kind of narrowing down some details. We've got some other continued, program maintenance going on, some street light updates. We've been talking with the consultant a little bit about, saving the city some money. We've applied for a grant. So we're really trying to make not only our street lighting more energy efficient and safer for everyone, but also working out every way to make sure that the costs associated with that are as minimal to the residents as possible.
Hey, Dylan,
yes.
Is that just swapping out like light bulbs, or because I was thinking about how I read about outdoor lighting and people trying to make sure that it's directed downward, not upward, so that we get rid of some of the light pollution. Is there does that factor into this at all?
Yeah, that's definitely going to be a large consideration in our designs. There are some limitations just because of street lighting requirements, and then also the requirements by our historic code. Effectively, we're limited to the design of the light that we can place downtown and different things like that. But we are exploring, how we can make sure that it's the most bird-friendly lights that we can possibly install. But that's kind of the bulk of it. I don't want to spend too much time going through, all these different updates. I can also comment that we are continuing to work on distributing reusable bags. But yeah, if anyone has any questions or comments, I'm happy to take them down.
Is there anything with the bag distribution that you'd like us to put on our Facebook page?
It's a good question. I'm aiming to start putting reusable bags on public transit next week. And so once that is actually placed, I'll let you know, and that would be a good thing to advertise.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I know that there really isn't time for like an AMRI update, the Annapolis Maritime Resilience Initiative, but I think that at some point before it gets too far along down the line, maybe we'd like to have them come talk to us.
Yeah, that makes sense. I could definitely reach out.
Anybody else have any questions? Okay. Alderman Savage is going to come next month, so he is not here, obviously. Member updates and future agenda ideas or requests. I will say that Bill and I have talked about potentially having the Naval Academy resilience representative come next month, potentially. So, Bill, I don't know if you've been able to update, outreach there, or that's something you can let me know if that's something for the agenda next month.
Yeah, I'll let you know about that, Kathy.
Okay. So updates and future agenda ideas. So for next month, we are going to have Alderman Savage. We'll have potentially Naval Academy. We'll talk about Facebook and the website. We will review the priorities and finalize them. What else? And then I'm mixing this in with updates. So, Bill, did you want to talk about the?
I'm sorry. I did just have a couple questions that maybe we can get updates on. The first is just, we've asked before, but I continue not seeing anything in the news, so I'm not sure what the status is of the Athens development. I occasionally see various trucks or things around the entrance, but have no sense of like what the actual status or even ownership is of that development anymore. And then maybe just, and I'm not sure if this is a question the city can really speak to, but I'm just curious if any of the federal funding pauses have affected any of the grants or things the city may rely on for any of their environmental programs. So I know I've seen statements put out by the Bay Trust, for example, and I'm not too concerned about the things the city has most of, not counting City Dock is probably the biggest question mark, but if there's any updates we can get at a future meeting, especially as things continue to evolve on a daily basis, I'd be curious about that.
Definitely. Yeah, I can get some more information on that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy. Good questions. Anyone else? Anyone want to talk about Save Our Trees Forum? A couple of us were there.
How did it go? I wasn't able to make it.
It was great.
Yeah.
I learned the difference between an arborist and a forester. I never understood that. So that was a really, really interesting to learn.
I've been walking around my neighborhood counting mulch volcanoes since the big.
Yeah.
There are a lot of them. No, it was great. There were a lot of people there. I didn't count them, but the room was pretty full. So very well attended. Yeah.
Yeah, I was putting down chairs all night.
Yeah, it was a lot of chairs. All right. Last call for any other business or updates. All right. Well, Alicia, thank you again. Looking forward to working with you this year.
It'll be good.
All right. Oh, one last thing. Dates for upcoming meetings. I did do that, right? So the fourth Wednesday is March 26th, April 23rd, May 28th, June 25th, July 23rd, August 27th, but I don't know if we want to meet in August, September 24th, October 22nd. Again, the November meeting is right before Thanksgiving, so I don't know if we want to look at the week before or the week after, which would be December 3rd, in which case would we want to skip the December meeting. And then we also want to talk about potentially having one, maybe two in-person meetings. So I'll put all this in an email, and maybe we can talk about this next month too, and get that kind of finalized. Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Kathy. And I'll note that if we are for the dates that we're thinking about moving, we may have to, if that's going to be a virtual meeting, depends on the city's availability to host that. But if those are the months we're maybe considering in person, we might have a little more flexibility.
Okay, good to know. All right, everybody, enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll see you next
Would you like
month.
to call for a motion to adjourn?
Oh, sorry, I can't just, it's not like at work where I just go, okay, everybody, we're done. Yes, thank you, Dylan. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Yep.
All in favor?
Uh,
Aye.